Okay, so are you ready to dive into Napoleon? We're talking early years, Corsica, the whole bit.
The ground floor before the empire,
Yeah.
right?
It's fascinating stuff.
It really is. Because you tend to picture him, you know, all emperor-y, not like a kid running around on some island.
Right, but you can't understand Napoleon without understanding Corsica. That's where it all begins.
And our main source, Sloane's biography, paints quite the picture. Corsica in the 1700s. Not exactly a relaxing vacation spot.
No, not at all. It was a political tinderbox. France, Genoa, independent factions. Everyone wanted a piece of it.
So you've got this constant tension, uprisings, shifting alliances, and into this walks young Napoleon.
Just as France finally gets a grip on the island, too.
Yeah.
Talk about entering the scene at an interesting time.
Okay, but imagine, right, you're a kid, you're growing up hearing these stories of legendary Corsican heroes, guys like Pascal Paoli.
Golly, now there was a figure who embodied that Corsican spirit, fighting for independence, almost ruling the island for a time. Exactly, so you've got that influence, but then you've also got Napoleon soaking up Enlightenment thinkers, Rousseau, the whole deal.
And he wasn't just reading them, this is key. This is a teenager writing his own history of Corsica, even sending it to Paoli. Ambitious much.
Wow. Okay, so he's thinking big picture early on, but I'm guessing he wasn't exactly writing these treatises between, like, perfect school reports.
Let's just say formal education wasn't his forte. Brilliant in bursts when something caught his interest.
But otherwise kind of a handful.
More like a mind that needed a battlefield, even then. You can practically see it, restless in class, but strategy, tactics. That's what makes his eyes light up.
So we've got the Corsican Fire, the books, a dash of teenage rebellion, and then bam, French
Okay.
Revolution kicks off.
Talk about perfect timing. Napoleon's about to get a crash course in turning chaos into opportunity.
Okay, but it's not just about Napoleon, the individual, right? Sloane really highlighted how his family was right there in the thick of it, too.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't just theoretical for him, the revolution.
Yeah.
This is about his family's survival.
Because they were struggling. I mean, not exactly aristocracy, were they?
Not even close. They relied heavily on his mother, shrewd woman, to manage their finances and their loyalties, constantly shifting depending on who held power on the island.
Talk about a high-stakes game. So he's got this revolution exploding around him, his family to protect. Were there even any good choices at that point?
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because you see this instinct in Napoleon to turn a bad situation to his advantage. He joins the Corsican uprising against France in 1793.
So he's fighting for independence.
On the surface, yes. But Sloane argues it's also strategic. He's building a military reputation, networking, learning how to play the game, even then.
Wow, so less about ideology, more about opportunity. That's not a good look if you're a hardcore Corsican patriot.
And it blows up in his face, big time. The rebellion fails. Paoli's faction brands him a traitor. He and his family have to flee Corsica, practically penniless.
Ouch. That's got to sting more than just a political loss. That's personal.
Yeah. Deeply. And it's a turning point. He loses his home, his standing, everything he'd been working towards.
I wonder, did that experience, that rejection, harden him somehow? Fuel his ambition even more?
It's like all his Corsicanity gets channeled into proving himself, but on the French stage now, because he throws himself into the heart of the revolution.
But France was wary of him, though, right?
Yeah.
This young Corsican officer, bit of a checkered past.
Exactly. They don't quite trust him. He has everything to prove. And what does he get?
Too long. Too long. Refresh my memory. That was
Major turning point. Royalist uprising, huge threat. Everyone's terrified Napoleon. He's an artillery officer, sees an opportunity nobody else does.
Okay, now this is where he shines, right? Sloane makes him sound like some kind of military prodigy.
He was brilliant, positioning cannons, directing the bombardment. Royalists were crushed, and just like that, Napoleon's the hero of Toulon.
And this is where those Robespierre connections come in, right? Because
Yeah.
wasn't that...
You're catching on. Augustin Robespierre, younger brother of Maximilian, head of the whole Reign of Terror, he's the one who recognizes Napoleon at Toulon.
Talk about a lucky break.
Lucky, or maybe just good instincts on Napoleon's part. Either way, it gets him into those inner circles. But talk about dangerous liaisons.
Yeah, 1 minute you're best buds with the Robespierres, next minute you're, well, how did he survive that fall from grace?
That, my friend, is the million-franc question, and Napoleon pulls it off, distances himself just enough, comes out more connected than ever, even meets Josephine.
Josephine. Now that's a story for another time.
But the point is, he's navigating purges, climbing the ranks, even finding time for romance Napoleon before the empire, but man, those pieces are starting to align.
It's funny, isn't it? Every time France takes a sharp turn, Napoleon seems to land on his feet a little closer to the top. Like he's got this incredible luck.
Luck, I don't know about that. It's more like he knew how to use chaos to his advantage.
You think he learned that from those Enlightenment books? It's like he's got this whole country as his own personal experiment.
And he's a fast learner. The Directory needs military victories. Bam, Napoleon conquers Italy. They need money to fund their little revolution. No problem. Napoleon sends it their way, by the cartload.
Straight from those Italian palaces he's conquering. Let's be real here. I mean, talk about a way to make friends and influence people, right? He's like, oh, by the way, here's a little something I found.
And he's smart enough to play it down, this image of the humble soldier just doing his duty for France. But meanwhile, every victory, every treasure he sends back, it just builds his legend.
Oh, totally. He's got the PR machine going full steam ahead. Everyone's hearing about Napoleon the genius, Napoleon the savior. It's brilliant, really, when you think about it.
He understood that power wasn't just about winning battles, it was about controlling the story. And nobody could spin a yarn quite like Napoleon Bonaparte.
But it does make you think, right? All this conquering, all this liberating. What about the people caught on the other side of that?
That's the big question with Napoleon, isn't it? The debate that's still going on today. Was he a true believer in those revolutionary ideals, spreading them through conquest, or was it all just a means to an end?
He's a real puzzle when you think about it. Clearly influenced by the Enlightenment, but also clearly a pragmatist who understands that to get things done in a revolution, sometimes you got to bend the rules a little, maybe break a few.
That's the fascinating thing about studying him, the contradictions, this blend of idealism and ruthlessness. You can't pin him down, and that's what makes him so endlessly compelling, even centuries later.
So where does that leave us? We started with a kid in Corsica, and now he's well on his way to ruling an empire. What's the takeaway here?
I think it's a reminder that history isn't a straight line. It's messy, it's unpredictable, it's full of detours and surprises, and the people who really shake things up, they're the ones who can adapt, who can seize the moment, even if that moment looks a lot like chaos.
And maybe learn a thing or two about ambition, resilience, and the power of a good story along the way. Well, folks, there you have it. Another deep dive into the history books. And trust me, we've only scratched the surface of Napoleon's story.